This is the 5th time I've done a complete rewrite for a video on this topic. Maybe because even though I ended up writing 4 other videos, all I ended up doing was trying to rip this game a new asshole. What's weird is, I still log in and play almost on a daily basis. Maybe it's for about 30 minutes to a couple hours, but I'm still logging in and enjoying myself and feeling like I want to play this game. And even looking forward to playing it some more the next day. Okay, so the story feels pretty pointless, and my drive to play the game are usually fueled by my own motivations, rather than all the quests or grindy content they drop in the game. And without even second guessing it, I log in and do the usual shit I enjoy. Why am I even bothering with NGS when there are so many other cooler games I could be playing right now? Did I catch some kind of stupid disease? With the latest Dia update, I think I can finally give you a good answer, but it's not pretty. Just like today's sponsor, the creators that brought you inflatable tube balloons. I'm just kidding. I just needed something to break from the intro. Like and subscribe and kiss my nuts. Let's roll the video. The last time I was this confused to give a definite yes or no is when someone asked me, is liking Futanari actually gay? Now, for me to give a satisfactory answer, there are some things we gotta go over first. Because saying you should play New Genesis at the moment also makes me feel like I have an 8-ball of copium up my ass and it already hurts enough to lie. But saying you shouldn't play New Genesis wouldn't be exactly true either. The thing is, I don't treat this game like a girlfriend I can't tell my parents about. I enjoy spending time with New Genesis. Even though I'm sure it would be pretty weird to explain my screenshot collection to my parents, and then trying to explain to people what this game even is, to those who don't even know it exists, is already kind of a headache. So in this video, I've decided to cram as much straight to the point information to share. For those of you wondering why the game is in the state it's in, or just wanting to add a couple more turds to your next PSO2 shit-talking conversation. A lot of my experience and how I'm evaluating PSO2 NGS comes from playing my fair share of character action games over my entire life. Games like Nier Automata, Astral Chain, the old God of War games, Animal Soccer World, Devil May Cry. Recently just got into the Monster Hunter series early this year. And then I grew up on older games like Kingdom Hearts, Robotech, and probably my all-time favorite, Gotcha Force. I definitely want to make a video on that in the future. It's really just kind of a rough list to give you an idea of where I'm coming from when I'm trying to compare and understand if New Genesis is truly any good at all. Remember, New Genesis came from a franchise that already got a good working formula for a game concept. It's not that NGS has to reinvent the wheel that might have inspired it, and there's this sense that the ideas in this game aren't exactly terrible, but it also doesn't feel like a proper evolution. I guess this is the price you pay for releasing a game that should have stayed longer in the oven. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Let's start with this. PSO2 NGS is probably one of the best, worst, good, bad, fun games out there. What NGS does well is really great, and what it does bad kind of sucks cucumbers. It feels like they're struggling to understand what makes these open world games work in the first place. Just like a lot of ongoing players, it's been a love-hate relationship. So of course, I'm not the only one who feels like they want to see where this all goes in the future, even coming back from time to time. But I also hate it because it feels like someone tried to reverse fuck their idea of what a Phantasy Star game could be, while also not doing what the Phantasy Star online games already got right many years ago. So before I start warming up your entry into the video, it's time to throw a little bit of spice in this lube. Let's get organized and break this down into 3 over-dramatic title cards. Is this finally a fun Phantasy Star game? Yeah, sure, I'd say so. Does it feel like a Phantasy Star game? Not yet. To say if this is a good or a bad thing really depends on if the future updates are gonna elevate the franchise. Because honestly, you could do whatever the fuck you want with a legacy IP, as long as whatever comes out of it is a good game. Now you've got a situation where Sega half-assed their way into pushing this out into the public, and we're stuck with the choices that were made years ago. And because this wasn't a success or even a good game at launch, you've got the entire weight of the previous entries stepping all over New Genesis like a church pastor in a whorehouse. People don't forget that shit, especially your actual fanbase who give you money in the first place. My gut tells me the directors are still trying to figure out how to make New Genesis an actual good game, and you can eventually feel it after playing enough. Sure, the actual gameplay and combat has evolved to fit more of the open environments, but they're kind of hardly doing anything new to really get the most out of all that space we have to play around in. This goes for both the combat and exploring these open environments. Why not actually make use of all this open space? Like, put large jump pads here instead of those fucking floating tube elevators. Or what about using the photon stamina bar for playing around in these environments, like using mounts? The director said they're not going to add mounts to the game. Adding features like mounts that environment playing move faster than the regular photon dash will throw off the balance of the game. What? What the fuck is he talking about? You're doing the same thing in NGS as you would do in any other open world game. Going from one enemy group to the next. How is NGS any more unique? So you want us to teleport everywhere instead? Is that really supposed to be more fun? You're telling me you couldn't turn these Ryuker towers into some kind of gas stations to make sure players aren't abusing the mounts or something, anything? Death Stranding has cars and people joke about that game being called a walking simulator. Okay, well, what about being able to hold and charge your jump to get to higher places, rather than using the clunky wall jumping experience we have now? Even base PSO2 had a ton of player attacks that even let you get around the linear maps faster. How did these not make it into New Genesis? Hell, if you just improved the enemy movesets, that would be a big enough difference right there. Just anything to make it feel like what I'm doing is getting the most fun out of all this open space. And as far as these region updates go, you guys gotta stop adding more regions to the game and just fill up the ones you already have with content that people want to play around in. It's not even that the environment designs are bad themselves. I would consider these places to be really visually cool places to explore. Really, you're kind of doing a lot of the same shit in these regions. Why not improve the combat and platforming with all the cool things you can do with photon energy instead of giving us new maps that are red, blue, and brown? So by the end of a year and a half of updates, this is the game that was planned? I mean, the content they have added does make sense for what they're trying to do, I guess. But I'm still having a hard time figuring out if this was an issue because of director choices or Sega not giving them any extra time to develop new mechanics and new interactive experiences. It's not like the New Genesis directors and staff can publicly punch upward anyways. It's just when your game starts to stink like shit and everyone can smell it, we're all kind of wondering where it's coming from. And by what I can tell so far, Sega is farting the loudest. Long-term game development is incredibly tough. When you're working on something for 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 years, you can't underestimate how incredibly complicated this entire process is. Especially when you're trying to develop an open world game. You need an actual friggin' crystal ball, an army of computer jockeys, and if you're lucky, you get game directors who actually enjoy playing video games and don't have their heads up their own ego-inflated assholes. Game development is a marathon, not a fucking Chris Chan shopping spree speed run. When your business relies on making first impressions really good, you would think as an official AAA publisher, they would, kind of get that's their job to make sure that their reputations of their products don't get fucked over. And it really wasn't about the launch of the game that scorned everyone, but it was the launch of an actually unfinished game and acted like it wasn't any different. Meaning, even if they had completed 80% of their game they had to release with, they still had to develop new and upcoming content the same exact time they were trying to fix all of the shit they just launched with what seems like having no grace period of even having time for polish. And yeah, it was technically playable when it came out, but also it technically launched with a fuck ton of server issues that lasted for months and barely had any content and makes my CPU run harder than Forrest Gump wearing Goku's training wheels. I just get more pissed off at Sega for basically shitting upwards an unfinished rocket into outer space and making the New Genesis crew deal with the consequences. The very first thing that Sega should have done with New Genesis is actually grow some balls and brand it as an early access game. It would have really set the stage for what we actually got instead of an attempt at basically what felt like a false advertisement of a game. I mean, are you really gonna tell me that the 1.0 version of NGS could have been a standalone product? Sega gave birth to New Genesis, tossed it under a bus, and let it roll downhill just to see what happens. Like Miyamoto once said, a delayed YouTube video is eventually good, but a rushed YouTube video is forever bad. See what I did there? When PSO2 launched globally in April 2020, Sega then pushed out all of its 8 to 9 years of development in Japan and busted its entire nut globally, then to release New Genesis 1 year later in June 2021. Why didn't you guys spread those base PSO2 updates for another 2 or 3 years to give yourself some extra development time for New Genesis? The original Japanese version of PSO2 that launched in 2012 had to basically wait an excruciating 8+ years to get all of their updates. And then on top of that, imagine being a Japanese player and then New Genesis finally releases in the state it was in. Ultimately, Sega shat this game out like someone blew up a septic tank in a trailer park. So, for the people who are interested in checking out New Genesis, the reason I'm giving you a bigger picture of what's going on here than just nitpicking all of the little issues, I'd rather show you the entire context as to why New Genesis has been trying to recover from the mess it was born in. The content that's available is probably enough for established players, but for new players looking in, it probably looks pretty ugly. Even if the game is free to play, so is YouTube, and that Cybervolt video ain't getting any less views. As a side note, I know I'm taking another huge dump on Sega, but without them, we still wouldn't have the Phantasy Star series to enjoy. Somebody, please, buy this franchise. Even though it seems like on the outside they make some dumb short-term business decisions, all I want for them is to treat their IPs with the same level of respect that the fans have for their games. Although I don't agree with the choices the directors made for these big updates we got, there is something inside of me that still wishes people could give this game a fair shot now. So it makes you wonder, right? Why might people still be playing PSO2 NGS then? So this is the part where I'll give them some well-deserved credit. One of the things that really kind of saved this game is the fact that you can transfer and use your cosmetics goods between both games. Keep in mind, you're gonna have to go play the old PSO2 to get a lot of that cool last-gen shit. And it's even kind of harder now that the old market is worse than whatever the fuck is going on in China. But in that process, you'll start building up your wardrobe and making a variety of characters you'll be playing as over time. Plus, they're bringing a lot of those older cosmetics back into New Genesis and remaking some of the more popular outfits from PSO2 into New Genesis. Even though some of the newer clothing is kind of busted, what are you guys doing with that hip slider? You know this shit has looked weird for like a year and a half now, right? But what you can do in Salon seems to kind of outshine all of that bullshit I was just complaining about. Arguably, PSO2 NGS still has one of the best MMO character creators out there. And for a game that has a ton of its strength on being a pretty social experience, you can see why this is such a big contributor helping this game stay alive. For someone like myself who plays this game on average, it's incredibly easy to spend a couple of hours in Salon fine-tuning your character's looks, changing your body shape to play as an old man or a cool sword guy, or like a 1,000-year-old girl, moving accessories around like cosmetic Legos to see what kind of new outfit parts you can come up with, and being able to change your character's body language make for a pretty fun fashion toy box. And sure, it isn't perfect, but I got hooked on what it's allowed me to do. So, yeah, it still feels like the combat abilities still need a bit more content, but being able to bring two weapons together and slap a weapon camo on it can let you do some pretty interesting things. Truthfully, it still maintains feeling like a fully online character action game, even if it only has half the player moveset of a 10-year-old game. And although the Stia update is just kind of more of the same that we've gotten over all the updates, it's beginning to feel like there are finally enough long-term class goals to be a somewhat worthwhile grinding experience. There are probably enough skills to unlock that are available now that let you play with a good enough starting kit for the weapons to mix and match your playstyles. Oh yeah, also people use it as a screenshot game, if that's something you might be into. So, is Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis worth playing? Probably. The newer players are probably going to have a much more enjoyable experience than the returning players. But as a returning player myself, I'm beginning to feel a drive again to go out and keep fighting stuff. And I'll be honest again. Right now, you could probably jump in and play through the content while enjoying the process of making your characters, but over time you'll begin to see that there's still a ton of growing room for this game and what it could offer. I don't expect people to play the game the same way I do to enjoy it, but there's always something kind of special about the Phantasy Star series. It seems to always try and bring people together who like and love character action games. And even though New Genesis has been a pretty rocky experience so far, who knows, maybe being a part of this entire process with the people who keep coming back might be something worth checking out after all. I mean, give me a fucking break. I'm trying my best here. I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude with the pink shirt. I'm just a dude with the pink shirt and a bunch of opinions trying to get people to join in on the same fun I'm having. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This one has been an absolute fucking bitch to write. Man, I was really awaiting a long ass time to see if that Stia update was gonna make or break the game. And what gave me a bit of a copium bump was seeing the new stuff we're gonna be able to do with the new creative spaces next year. Again, thanks for watching the entire thing. If you made it to the end, I appreciate everyone who likes and subscribes and comments down below. I think it's awesome everyone is helping me reach 500 subs, so thank you for that. But I'll still be making PSO2 videos in the future. I'm pretty excited to start talking about other games as well, like Animal Soccer World.
If you're making one wrong move, I will eat you. You old dictator.